Hello and welcome to Gold's Garage again. And so in this video, someone asked in the comments if I could show the process of getting the engine once it's ready and complete onto the test stand, the process for firing it up, setting the timing, all the preparation that goes through until we take it to the dyno. And then we are going to dyno this engine on March 30th. So today I'm going to go through all that detail for you in this video. Before I get started, just a quick announcement. I talked about this before. On the 30th of April, my son and I are both going to Forsyth College in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. My good friend Brian Hambley is an instructor there, and they have a course on race car engineering. And they cover engine building, chassis building, all that stuff. Pretty cool stuff. And according to Brian, some of his students are subscribers to Gold's Garage. So Brian, by the way, had a long, illustrious career as an engine builder in NASCAR, building NASCAR, ARCA, pretty much every class, circle track type racing in his career, and now he's a teacher at Forsyth College. And Brian's invited me to teach a class. We're going to video that on the 30th of April, and the subject is going to be one of my favorite subjects, fasteners. So I've done it before, but there's more stuff coming about fasteners, and I have lots of time to get prepared. Lots of ideas, and going to cover that subject. And according to Brian, I might even have an ARP rep handy to discuss fasteners with when I'm there. So that might be interesting. So on this project, the last time we made a video on the Pontiac, this is Joe Fernandez Pontiac. So I got three going on. I got Merrick Hanger's Pontiac. It's in the corner. We're supposed to get the rest of the parts. Mainly waiting for a camshaft from Merrick's. And the 389 that belongs to Todd Brown, which is a previous video, I got an interesting revelation. We had in Todd's engine, the block is in the machine shop right now, and I'm going to have it back this week. Real interesting observation, failure analysis, cause and effect analysis. Todd's engine was in great shape except one lobe on camshaft and one valve lifter failed. I did some cause and effect analysis, and I think I have the answer to what caused that. And we're going to talk about that when we get Todd's block back. So back to Joe's block. As you can see, it's just about ready to put on the run stand. In the last video, we were still checking deck height. We didn't have the heads on. The camshaft was in. I did show degreeing the cam in a video. And sometimes I just got to get work done, and we don't have an opportunity to film everything. But we got two more Pontiacs coming. So we'll cover off all the details that maybe we missed this time. So it's ready to go. And I've installed the cylinder heads, the front water cover, the timing chain, all that stuff. Joe's using an Elderbrock Performer. Yes. Manifold, aluminum intake manifold. Wanted to check the model to make sure I had that right. We are going to start it up with an HEI, my shop HEI Pontiac distributor, and be interesting in the future videos. Joe has an electronic distributor that you can program with your cell phone, and we're going to display that when we get it on the dyno. But I don't want to be fooling around with that on the first startup, so I'm going to use my distributor that I know and trust and the carburetor that I know and trust. So the process is, once the engine is ready, actually we're stalled today because I got 5 or 6 belts and I don't have one to fit this setup, so I got to get another belt, so we're kind of stalled today. As soon as that belt's on, it's going to go on to the test stand. And if you watch my videos before, I've started lots of engines up on the test stand, and someone wanted to see how that gets done. So just talk about test stands first. There's a lot of ways to do it. Some guys build their own from scratch. They fabricate it from scratch. I've watched some videos about that, and they do a really nice job. This one, the main part that's red was a kit that I bought, and I've actually made a video just about that before. But when it comes in the kit, there's no rad, there's no provision for a rad. Actually, it's intended that the front of the engine is here and the exhaust is that side. And obviously I wanted to use a rad, so I modified it basically and installed a rad, and that way there's other ways you can do that. You can run a garden hose in and out of it if you want, but I wanted to control the temperature, be able to measure the temperature rise and all that kind of stuff, put pressure in the block. And so I did install a rad. In order to do that, I had to turn it around. I installed an electric fuel pump, a disconnect switch, electric fuel pump. Beauty of an electric fuel pump is that on a startup, you don't have to wait till your pump picks up fuel from the tank, fills up the pump, fills up the carburetor and all that. By that time, the engine's turned over multiple times. And when you're breaking in a flat tap of camshaft, you don't want to turn it over any more times than you absolutely have to. So electric fuel pump enables us to turn the fuel pressure on. We have individual switches for ignition, fuel, fan, and lights, and a main disconnect here. That way we could turn the electric pump on, adjust the carburetor float levels, know we have fuel pressure, we don't have any leaks, so we're not fooling around with that on the startup. So when we do go to pull the trigger and start it, it's ready to go. So the other thing to note, if you buy the kit, it's probably a good way to get started because there's a lot of things in there unless you're a good fabricator. The wheels aren't very good in the kit. I've replaced all the wheels. They weren't made for heavy engines like Pontiacs or big block Chevs, that's for sure. I've replaced all the wheels, but it's very, very adjustable. So belly can come around here. You have there's usually a stand at the back for small blocks that bolts to it, but big blocks and Pontiacs don't fit that way. So I used a couple of these. Actually I used these in my late model stock car for the setup, but these are adjustable and they just bolt into somewhere in the bell housing mount on the back of the block. We motor mount the pins go through here just the way they do in a car, and it's totally adjustable back and forth either way. Right now I got it kind of bolted because I want this location fixed, but it's completely adjustable. I've had everything from Austin Healey's 6-cylinder Chevs, a couple different styles of those, big blocks, small blocks, Pontiacs. So it's pretty darn versatile. We keep all the plumbing and wiring for temperature gauge, water pressure, fuel pressure. Sorry, water temperature and oil pressure. Hookups ready to go. The carburetor setup is ready to go. So installing is not a big deal. I just got to get that belt on first, because once this engine is installed, it's going to be right up against the radiator, and I can't get the belt on later. So we'll be back to you in the next clip as we get this thing closer. Please remember to like and subscribe. We're always looking for new subscribers. If you found my videos interesting, please help us out. It doesn't cost you anything, and it motivates me to keep going. I mentioned earlier in this video that on April 30th, my son Mike and I are going to Forsyth Community College in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And forgot to mention, after that, we're going to Osprey Custom Cars in Wilmington, North Carolina. We're going to visit Ron Siriano. And Osprey Custom Cars is a restorer also, and a custom car builder. They specialize in a lot of these big mega trucks and in off-road vehicles and so on. And I built a 6-cylinder Blue Flame 6 engine for them, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago for a 1946 Chev pickup truck. So it's going to be, we will make some videos on that trip. So since the last segment, we've got this engine on the stand. We were getting it ready to put on the stand in the last view, and we've got it on the stand. I wanted to go over some comments on my channel asked, what's the process for doing that? So as I mentioned before, this is a universal stand that I bought on, and I have made actually a video just about the stand before. And I'm not a good fabricator, so all the red part that you see came with it. And it actually came with this part at the back. The tray wasn't part of it. but this fits in like this, comes off, and that works if you got small engines, small block Chevs or other small blocks. But with big engines like the Pontiac or a big block Chev, I have to take it out. So we just use turnbuckles, and these turnbuckles are from the circle track race car days. And by using the turnbuckles, this is all adjustable. We can get it level and square and straight enough for use. So when we go to start it up, we want to be sure it's a flat tappet camshaft, flat pit camshaft. Instant mortality is a big problem, and we don't want to be any part of that. So we do everything we can to make sure that it does start. So one of the things that we do is go through a checklist and be sure that when we're ready to fire, it's going to fire. And so the setup is check the battery voltage. So just before doing this, I did put the battery on charge. It's good to go. Fuel in the tank. I filled the tank. Fuel valve turned on. So there's a valve down here. If that's not turned on, it's not going to get fuel to it. Fuel in the carburetor. So we actually turned the fuel pump on, and I can actually do that. And you can hear the pump running. And if you look down the carburetor, you see a little squirt. So you know when we go to fire it, it's going to fire right away, and there's not going to be any delay. If you don't have something like that, and you depend, especially if the engine's in the car, and you got to depend on that fuel pump drawing fuel all the way from the tank, fill the fuel line, fill the float bowl, the engine's going to turn over a lot of times. So I would suggest, if you don't have a setup like this, you fill the fuel bowls in advance before you start. And when you first crank it, you should be able to see a squirt come out of your accelerator pump, and then you know your engine's ready to fire. So it's really important that it fires up quickly. So what else didn't I talk about? Carb adjuster for fast idle. I've done that. Keep a screwdriver in my pocket for the startup, so I'm ready to adjust the carburetor. Okay. Timing mark's ready. So I've set the timing. I preset the timing. So what we do, we line the rotor up with number 1 spark plug and then turn it 45 degrees. Now it's a Pontiac distributor. So a Pontiac distributor, the distributor turns counterclockwise. So to advance it, you turn it clockwise. So I had it lined up, and then I turned it about 45 degrees, halfway between the 2 points. That's 45, sorry. Halfway between the 2 points is 22.5 degrees, and that gives me about 22.5 degrees of initial timing. Hook up the vacuum. You always want vacuum advance for any startup, and particularly the first run, because the engine will start and idle a lot better. So the vacuum advance is hooked up. I do not even install the timing light for first start. I'm close enough. I know I just want to get it running. Break in the camshaft, and on the next cut, we will install the timing light and set the timing. So what else did we do here now? Timing marks, we check the oil, we've done that, check the water, tighten all the hose clamps, tighten all the oil plugs, I've done that. 12 volt to the coil. So one thing you want to be sure, and if it's engines in your car, you want to make sure that when you go to start it, there's your 12 volts that goes to your coil. And if the power is turned on, if the ignition is turned on, there you go. When the ignition is turned on, we got 12 volts to the coil. So now, if you have an engine in your car that was an older car that only had 8 volts to the coil from startup, and you have a modern distributor that's not ignition points only need 8 volts, you will probably only have 8 volts to the coil. So you have to make sure if you install an aftermarket distributor, electronic distributor, that you have 12 volts, not 8 volts. Some of the old systems in the 50s and 60s had a resistor in the circuit, or they use a resistance wire. Even my 68 Camaro came from the factory with a resistance wire with 8 volts to the coil. So if you put a transistorized or electronic ignition in it, you need 12. So we're just about ready to go here. And I mentioned checking the oil, water as well. So when we start up, we know that even if we do check the water, which we've done, it's going to go down a little bit. And one of the things I do initially, I don't tighten the cap. There is a temperature gauge on the stand, and I mentioned about the stand in the past. I bought this stand as a kit. None of these gauges didn't last very long. I've replaced both of them already. But anyway, if you're not paying attention, we are paying attention. But if you have the rad cap loose, when the water gets to the boiling point, which is 212 degrees, it's going to start boiling over, and that's a safe point to shut it off. If you have pressure in the cap, you could have, before it boils, you could have 240 degrees, and you don't want that on the first start of an engine. Basically, I'm going to start it, bring it up to temperature, shut it off, let it cool down, take the valve covers off, check the valves, set the timing light up, and make the next start. Okay, here's our first start. Make sure we got the power turned on. That's ignition, that's fuel pump, or fan, that's fuel pump. Let's see what happens. Okay, you just seen the first startup. Since then, we have run it long enough to break the cam in. Typically, before I'm ready to go to the dyno, we'll use at least a full tank of gas. And this is, I don't know, a gallon or two, whatever, but it takes about a half an hour run time to do that. We'll shut it off, bring it up to temperature. And as soon as it gets up to temperature, I shut it off, let it cool down, take the valve covers off, check the valves, make sure everything's good with the valve train, and if there's any issues going on with the camshaft, it'll show up almost immediately. So we've done that a couple times already, and we're pretty happy the cam's broken in now. We're basically ready to go to the dyno. This is just my shop carburetor. We're going to put Joe's carburetor on it, and just make sure Joe's carburetor's tuned. I know it's old and ugly. It's an old friend. I've had it for more than 50 years, but it works great. It's a double pumper. It's basically just my startup carburetor. So that's done. Joe's also got one of these modern distributors that you can program with your cell phone. So we're going to put that on. I didn't want to play around with that on the first startup. Everything seems fine. We did have one little minor valve cover leak, and that's fixed. And we're good to go. This is a Summit 2801 camshaft. 2802 Summit camshaft. And Joe brought that to me. He also he got all the machine work done himself. And this is now a 400. He started off with a 455. And this is the engine that had the little bolt out of the carburetor fall into the intake valve and basically break the cylinder wall, break the piston. So he started off with that engine. This is a brand new engine. This is a 400 now. Got a new block, or another block. It's been all machined. Cylinder heads will be reconditioned. And we're going to take this to the dyno on the 30th of March. So watch for that. Thanks for watching Gold Scratch. Please remember to like and subscribe. And we'll have lots more coming up. We got 2 more videos coming up with 2 more Pontiacs to do. Merrick's Pontiac is next with the camshaft. And Todd Brown's after that. So that'll be the end of the Pontiac run for a while. And then we're back to small block shafts. Thanks for watching.